Good evening, Warriors, and welcome into a watch-along version of the R&R Sports Report. I'm your host, Randy Isba. With me, as always, Mr. Robert Hagan. Hagan, this game refuses to end at all.
No,
I thought I planned this beautifully, and they've decided to go into overtime, and neither offense is doing anything now. What's up?
I mean, it's been a crazy watching this game as uh, I've been stressing. I was telling you here prior, I'm still working on my power rankings, and this can change a few of the spots that
Well,
I
of course.
have, and is in a game that should have been all about Jacksonville dominating Browning. It is proven that Browning is starting to be a quarterback that can be dependable.
I don't know about dependable, but every quarterback can have a good game, and Jaguars defense has definitely struggled to slow him down. And now the big news is the injury to Trevor Lawrence, and we will see what's going on there. But it just feels like this AFC that was super deep and very talented just continues to lose quarterback after quarterback, and it makes it a little bit more difficult to figure out, you know, who even belongs in the playoff hunt and who could make a run for it. But Browning is definitely showing his mettle here for
Yep.
Cincinnati. Could pull off the upset, and we'll see what Jacksonville does if Trevor Lawrence misses sometimes. But AFC is completely wide open. We'll get into all of that and so much more. Obviously, we won't really dive into the full show until this Cincinnati Jacksonville game is done because we like to start the show talking about this Monday night football game. We'll get into some of the other games that happened this week, kind of look at the playoffs, preview the power rankings that we will post tomorrow, and of course, the big topic of the show once we actually get fully started, we'll be talking about the travesty that is the college football playoffs. And I believe I will be coming at this in a direction that most people will not. And we will get into that and a lot more. But while we wait for this, high school basketball is in full swing, which has continued to blow up our schedule. Schedule this week did not get blown up because of high school basketball. My daughter has her Christmas concert tomorrow. I was just going to have Robert find a guest host this week so we could finally just have a Tuesday show. And then the college football playoff thing happened, and I'm not missing this one at all. Next week will also just be a Monday show. Clarkston ended up adding games to their schedule, so we are both unavailable next Tuesday. So it just continues to be a giant headache. But speaking of that, how are the Clarkson Bantams doing to start their year?
Well, Clarkson had a weekend tournament where they played down in Pendleton. Both the boys and the girls took on the same teams. I don't know how it happened that played exactly the same ball clubs both times, but let's talk about the girls first. Looking quite deep as both the Jaden and Jordan McCormick Marks have transferred. I don't know if we talked about that. Transferred from Lapway to Clarkson, and now are playing for Clarkson. Both of them have a great tournament there. Kendall Wallace had 35 points between both games in Pendleton, and comes away with 2 big wins. So they are now up with a record of 3-0 to start the season. The boys also had a great tournament, knocking off Moscow in a old overtime battle royal almost feeling in last week as they were down every quarter, come back and ended up winning that one in overtime. Xander Van Dyne, 14 points in the fourth quarter in overtime with that one. So, and then they did go down to Pendleton, also played in the Pendleton tournament. Jason Reinard, a sophomore, had a huge game, 5 3-pointers in that game. Did unbelievable. He ended up having 17 points. I know I put 15 in the notes. He had 17.
We have show notes this week. It's
Yeah. I typed a few this morning, but yeah, he had a huge game as a sophomore, well balanced. The freshman Nico Ahi played and had a bunch of uh, uh, time in both games. So, and then Carter Stein won. He is looking good. A little slow start against
So
Moscow.
I can't anymore.
Are you watching our green room as I am?
I am watching the green room right now. We're going to have a special guest a little bit later on in the show, Jacksonville Jaguar fan who is stressing in our green room right now. I'm having a lot of keeping my eye on him. We will reveal that here shortly if those do not know who we are talking about. Speaking of high school basketball, girls got back on the winning side in a close game up against Moscow on the road as they were able to win that one 51-48. So they improved to 2-3. And then the boys got underway in the Capital Classic. You can watch all these games. I actually watched bits and pieces of their 3 games just to kind of get a feel of the team down at the Capital Classic. As Lewiston loses their first game to Ridgeview 61-53, and then have 2 fantastic games that come down to buzzer beaters against Blackfoot and Bishop Kelly. Bengals come away with victories in both 63-61 and 52-49, where their opposing team had the ball with a chance to either take the lead or win it, depending on which game it was. Could not get the basket to fall. Both games, the team was down by a decent margin at one point and fought back. And that's definitely something I've noticed with both of the Lewiston teams so far this year. Obviously, I've seen it with my eyes for the girls and just through the video for the boys, but both coaches have teams with a lot of heart right now, and hopefully they'll get a lot of talent improved as well as the boys' very young squad. Girls do not have a single senior on their team, as we've talked about before. So very interesting year for Lewiston. The last year they will be part of the highest ranking in Idaho. They will still stay in 5A. So this is a weird year. So usually when a team gets pulled down to the lower level, you say last year at the 5A level. Well, no, they're going to stay 5A, but everyone else is going to 6A. It's complicated. But there you go, Lewiston. They will be in action tomorrow on the road as they will take on Pullman. Both teams are in action there. LC was able to get a sweep this week. They had some weird scheduling because of the craft fair. They played Thursday night. Neither of us were able to get there. They played Friday afternoon. I was there with Danner on the call. We had a shoe thrown at us throughout during the game. But we had a lot of fun. Both teams continuing to look really, really good. And the boys continue to impress with just how deep that team is.
Yeah, it's looking like it's going to be a great season with those guys. I am looking and ready to go and watch my first action over there. But you said it earlier, our schedules have been such total disarray. I've got to sit down and look at the schedule. Okay, which one am I going to go get to watch finally these guys in person?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been lucky enough to get to a bunch of them. I've not really had too much scheduling conflict. I did again on Thursday, but other than that, I try to get over there and watch as much as I can, and I help out, do all the men's recaps, and having a lot of fun doing that. We got about 3 minutes left of this overtime game, give or take. I know I'm slightly behind watching it on the ESPN.com stream. I've asked Hagan not to spoil as he's 7 or 8 seconds ahead. Though now I may get spoiled if Eric is ahead because I can't stop but laugh and enjoy his reactions because his team actually matters. People ask me how I felt about the Jets Falcons game. I told them I have no idea. I but watched very little of it because why would you? Your team was on bye, so you were okay with that, yeah?
I was. I actually finished typing my show notes or finished typing my power rankings a little bit ago, and I, Baltimore does kind of win this week as Pittsburgh and Cleveland both take a loss. So
Yeah.
now the Ravens have a 2-game lead in the AFC North. So it was kind of a win-win as Baltimore could sit back and and relax a little bit. But that game you're talking about, yours, and the other game for me
We're
that
very glad to hear that, by the way, Will.
the other game for me that I just shocked with the scoring, and yes, we're talking about it, but the LA Chargers and the New England Patriots.
Why were you shocked by it?
6 points. That's it. That's all we can generate between two NFL
The Chargers
teams.
have not been good all year long. Offensively, they've just been a complete disappointment, and that's what the Patriots do. I wish I got had the full stat for you, but the New England Patriots were the first team since like the 1940s to only give up 10 points or less in 3 straight games and lose in all 3 games. That is New England Patriot football. Appreciate you, Robert. Thanks for just stopping in and say hi. Watch the video later on. Sorry about your Chiefs losing to Haley's Green Bay Packers. Yeah, he has a job that's like early in the morning and stuff. That poor kid. But that was a wild one on Sunday night. I think you got to watch a little bit more than I did, as you were not bowling. You were still down at the bowling alley, but not missing plays while you were up to bowl or whatever. But Jordan Love continues to absolutely improve and get better, and that frozen tundra really, I think, played a factor for Kansas City, who just continues to look rough, I think, on offense.
Yeah, and for those guys where they still dropping passes.
Eric in the back is correcting me. It was 1938. That Patriot stat was not since 1938, so even worse than the 40s.
Yeah. For me, watching what little bit I was able to with dealing with other things down there, but Jordan Love is looking a little bit more, but it's still the big thing for this team is how they are still dropping the ball. They just cannot complete a pass. They just don't look. They're not as in sync anymore. And I made some.
You there?
I have.
What are you doing?
I had ESPN. I'm like, what was some chiming commercial come in, and I'm like, where's it coming from?
Well, I couldn't hear it.
Silly,
so I don't know.
silly ads. But the thing I'm thinking, is this team's got to find.
Stop it! Stop it! Come back from what? Stop! You jerk. Go ahead.
Which comeback player are we talking?
She's talking about Jordan Love.
No, I don't think so. Oh,
are you gonna finish your thought? You have mumbled and stumbled for 5 minutes.
No, for me, it's got to be this receiving core. They've got to figure things out. They've got to start catching the ball from Patrick Mahomes, and it's just not happening. As I'm watching our green room. Uh-oh.
I think I got spoiled. We'll talk about it in a moment. Maybe. I don't know what's happening to him. Eric is losing his mind in the green room. We're going to get to him in just a minute. We'll get right to the college football playoff debate here in a second, because we're going to just have to get to it as this game just refuses to end, though maybe it has just ended. We will see here in a second. Oh, boy. I'll let Eric recover. I will say the quote of the week comes from our buddy Robert Taylor, who did come in and say hi. He told me that MVS, the wide receiver for the Chiefs, is so bad he can't even catch a penalty, as he was definitely interfered with on a catch attempt. And the referees are really bad. That is for sure.
They're starting to really cause major issues in that. Did you think the penalty of Patrick Mahomes getting hit on the sideline was legit?
No, that was terrible too. That was terrible too. There was bad calls on both sides.
And I don't think it was other games just as much too.
Oh yeah, the refereeing has just been garbage this year. 100%. It's been rough, and it's disappointing, and it's frustrating, and there you go. Cincinnati Bengals end up with a huge win, 34-31 in overtime against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who not only lose the game, they might have just lost their quarterback for possibly the season. Hopefully not. We will see. Jaguars drop to 8-4, which keeps, I believe, your team at the top of the AFC playoffs, or is it Miami?
It is Miami, just ahead of us.
That is true. That's why they didn't throw the flag, because MVS would have just dropped a pass anyways, and you can't get called for pass interference on an uncatchable ball. That is very fair. There, big win for the Bengals, who moved to 6-6, and now we can get to the topic of the show. I will just check real quick. Person in the green room, can you just give me a thumbs up if I add you to the stream? You're not going to just throw a bunch of 4-letter words. No, I said thumbs up, not middle finger. He did give me a thumbs up, but there you go. It's Eric Watkins. We had to bring him in because we're going to have a really fun discussion about the college football playoffs and how the horribleness within. I warned everyone 4 weeks after Alabama had their close win against Auburn that Alabama was going to beat Georgia and Alabama was going to end up in the college football playoffs. Hate that I'm right, but I am right. And that is not even where my frustration begins. However, I'm going to go around between you two real quick. We'll start with Eric, our guest here. Thoughts on the decision to go Michigan 1, Washington 2, Texas 3, and Alabama 4, leaving Florida State, who went undefeated, out of the running completely, and just your overall thoughts on everything there.
So having Michigan 1, Washington 2 first and foremost, I understand. I saw a lot of the Pac-12 championship game. I saw quite a bit of the Big Ten championship game. Iowa is a team, especially the last couple of years, known for their defense. Anytime you can hit an under on a game total that's sitting at like 25, you know points are going to be at a premium. To shut them out 26-0, that was a more comprehensive performance against Iowa than Washington over Oregon, even though Oregon's a better team. I understand. You and I talked about this. I looked at the precedent and said, okay, they're going to have an undefeated Power 5 conference champion in the playoff. I thought even though it was ugly, even though it wasn't comprehensive, Florida State was somehow going to get in. But I did warn you ahead of time. Texas winning boosted Alabama's resume. In some ways, I get it, but I'm with one of those, and I can't believe I'm saying this as a Miami fan, but FSU, while they would have gotten blown out, at least deserved a shot.
Robert?
No, I agree. I think Florida State, even with them going undefeated, should have gotten in there. And yes, the comments, I think, not being fair of, even though this team put another guy on their back when their quarterback goes down, still proved that they could get the wins, get it done. Now, not as big as they had been doing earlier in the season, the first 8 weeks, but still coming away with good wins that should have kept them ahead of Alabama. Now, I agree with Eric 1,000%. With that win by Texas, that does bolster Alabama up. It just does in the standings. But for all these other one teams and one lost teams, I'm going to throw another team in there that has to be talked about, and that is, and I can't believe I'm saying it, is Ohio State. Even with Ohio State, their only loss comes from Michigan. So, if you really want to look at all of this, Ohio State has just as much of a complaining as does maybe Oregon. I do believe Oregon is in the right spot at number 8, but Ohio State does have a little bit to add into that also.
Go ahead, Eric.
This goes to something that I read, and I'm going to make a prediction right now. I said about 3-4 years ago, watch what happens between 2022 and 2026 when the TV contracts run out. There would be chaos. What are we seeing now? Chaos. The playoffs are expanding next year. The next time frame is 2030. My prediction for right now, I think by 2030 or starting with the 2030 season, conference championship games will be no more. You will have more of an emphasis on the playoff, less doubts, one fewer data point, more money for the playoff. I think with these extra games, for that exact reason that you mentioned, Robert, teams like Oregon, teams like Georgia, without these conference games, you only have to worry about seeding, which that's going to be some fun arguments going forward. But what's old is new again, and we're going to transport ourselves further back to the 90s, which honestly, after tonight, I wish I was, but that's for later.
I will say Rich Eisen also says he doesn't want the conference championship games anymore because that just becomes an issue where teams don't have a chance to fight their way into the playoffs because they don't end up in the right division. Ohio State was in the wrong division, so they don't get in. Though I will say a lot of the conferences have kind of got away from the division structure. There's a couple that still live with it, but a lot of the conference anymore are just give us the top 2 teams, and those top 2 teams will get to fight for it. I like the conference championship games because the way they're built is that is how you get into these playoffs. With the 12-team playoff coming in, the only 6 teams guaranteed in are the highest ranked 6 conference champions. So I think that is a way to
now.
Get yourself. Well, no, they have it sit. They have it the 6th highest. That's what I was curious about, and I looked it up before the show. It was not the Power 5 and then the best of the non-Power 5 conferences. It was the 6th highest rated conference champions. Now with the Pac-12 becoming the Pac-2 and whatever they're going to be called for 1 year while they start to work out a deal with the Mountain West. They have a scheduling deal with them next year, but they are not part of the same conference. So technically either Washington State and Oregon State will just be called the Pac-2 or they're just going to be independents for a year. I don't know what legality is going to happen there over the next 10 months or so. We'll see what happens. However, but that'll open up another one for a Mountain West or AAC or a different conference that usually would not get in. And that's totally fine. However, that to me is totally fine to go, okay, Ohio State has no chance to make the playoffs. They didn't win their conference tournament. Sucks for them. They lost to the team that ended up being the conference champion. If the Big Ten wants that fixed, get rid of your divisions, and it would have been a lot more fun to watch Michigan State versus Ohio State for a second straight time instead of Iowa being it. I mean, since we're always worried about the ratings and we're worried about competition, all of a sudden, even though we aren't in any other facet of the game, we're not worried about how sad of a non-conference schedule Michigan had. We're not dinging them for that, even though they went undefeated. We're not dinging Washington for barely beating everyone on their schedule. They were not a dominant team ever. That's why they were a 9-point underdog against Oregon, a team they already beat. It's because Vegas went, well, they're not decisive against anybody. And then you look at Florida State. And I'm going to have questions for you guys, and I'm going to have retorts if you disagree with me, and then hopefully you do, and who knows, that's the whole fun of this. But Florida State, yes, it sucks. The quarterback goes down. That is a part of this game. We saw it tonight with Trevor Lawrence. I made a joke to a few of you and then tweeted it out that the Jaguars are now eliminated from being even considered for the playoffs because their quarterback got hurt. I go, oh, yeah. No, that's only in college football. He went down a few weeks ago. Since then, with their second-string quarterback and their third-string quarterback, they beat an SEC team, and they won their conference championship. But it wasn't pretty. So my first question to you, and I'll open it up to either of you real quick. Say Travis was never on this team, and the offense was sluggish, but the defense was really good. Take an Iowa, for example. Just say Iowa was slightly better offensively, where they could actually compete in games a bit more. But they win games ugly. And it's not this high-scoring shootout style that we saw from Florida State or we see from Michigan or Washington. If they go undefeated with that defensive style, are you keeping them out of the playoffs?
People are going to hate me for this. Yes. And I'm going to tell you why. I entirely understand you play everybody who's in front of you. I entirely understand sometimes you got to win ugly. As a longtime football fan,
As
and
all of the other teams have done this year, yeah.
Right. As a longtime football fan and something of a historian, I get it. But at the same time, and as I said, what matters more? Numbers, ratings, ad revenue. And at a time to where you're now throwing billions of dollars, and you are already seeing diminishing returns with college football being more regional and everything else, eyeballs going to something else, people are not going to sit in mass and watch a 3.5 hour slobber knocker rather than a 4 hour games in the 40s, shootout, last team wins, etc. That's not going to keep butts in seats and eyes on screens. Unfortunately, the committee knows that all too well. Plus, if Jordan Travis wasn't even on this team and we are in an Iowa situation, I'm going to say right now, they wouldn't even be undefeated, which I know that's going to bring out a whole other argument, but sometimes calls and certain things go against you. Safety. Just saying.
So I'm going to disagree with you guys just a little bit, and here's why. You can
I
look
haven't
back
said
at
my opinion yet.
Here's the thing. Florida State, yes, they had some big wins, they had some close wins, but we look back. Travis didn't have huge games against all of these guys. You look at Boston College, he only had 222 yards. You look at Virginia Tech, who has been a decent team. He only had 170 yards. He had 359 in the blowout at Wake Forest. Even against your Miami Hurricanes, he only put up 265 yards in a game that was within 7. You look at the last 3 games that Florida State played. North Alabama, yes, should be a blowout. It was. Florida State, rivalry games. We know how rivalry games work. They are hands down the toughest schedule. Roadmaker only threw for 134 yards. And then you hold number 14 Louisville to 6 points. I'm sorry. This committee messed up when they don't take a 13-0 team and put them in the playoffs. And I kind of agree with you a little bit, Eric. It's all about the money, and that's the thing. And who's going to sit and want to watch a more defensively sound game than watching the air raid and throwing the ball all over the place? But for a team that proved that they could do things when their best guy wasn't putting up the numbers, and to still come out 13-0 after he goes down in the 3 final games, that's a total blown call by the committee.
And for those that are going, well, they would have just been blown out, so they should not be in there. 2 years ago, your spreads in your semifinal games, Georgia, Michigan, and Alabama, Cincinnati, was plus 23 and plus 21. Like, it's not always going to be these close games. Like, there's going to be blowouts in these semifinal games. It's just, they happen, and that's okay. But to me, the whole thing of, the best 4 teams get in. So where's Georgia? Georgia was the best team all year, according to you. Mm-hmm. They lose a close game to Alabama. But now all of a sudden they're not one of the best 4 teams. Ohio State was one of the top 4 teams all year long. They lose a good game to Michigan. They're not one of the best 4 teams.
I still think Alabama
So-
is the best team out there.
And honestly,
Excuse me, Georgia is the best team out there.
over Texas, given basic precedent, yes, if you told me, hey, you're going to have another 2 SEC teams in the playoff, Georgia and Alabama, I'm like, okay, Bama 3, Georgia 4, you've done this before. Let's see what happens and if there's another rematch. Would I have liked it? No, but I would have understood it.
Here's my big issue. And Chris brings up a point. We've seen Texas beat Bama before. We don't need to see it again. That was week 2. Nobody remembers that other than trying to figure out the tiebreaker. To me, tiebreakers don't mean anything in college sports because unless it happened very recently, teams are going to be completely different. There's no preseason in college football, and the only time that you can face these non-conference opponents, unless it's your rivalry week, is very early in the season when you're trying to figure stuff out. Like Nick Saban was still trying to figure out who his starting quarterback was in week 2. So who is the better team all year long? I think Alabama was a better team than Texas. Now, yes, Texas beat Alabama, and you could use that if you want. But this is where my opinion may be completely different than everyone else that I've been hearing, and it may ruffle some feathers. I don't care that Alabama got in. Again, I've said for weeks, Alabama was going to beat Georgia, and Alabama was going to get in. And you know what? For them to jump past Florida State is understandable because they beat the best team in the country. They beat the defending national champion who hadn't lost in over 2 years. So they deserve, with their 1 loss and their SEC championship, to be part of the 4. Even though they have 1 loss, it happened in week 2. To me, that's preseason, and that's fine. It's Texas that I do not think should be in this Final 4. And I have plenty of reasons for it. The first one, right off the bat, if Georgia beats Alabama on Saturday, does Texas then jump Florida State? Or does Texas only jump Florida State because they had to bring Alabama into the playoffs and they knew head-to-head was going to matter, so then they allowed Texas to jump them too?
Hear me out with this one.
Go for it. No, you're fine.
And I know I'm going to reference some tweets from some very salty people in Tuscaloosa, but it brings a great point. How fine of a detail are we looking at? Because my immediate points of comparison, say we have Georgia 1, Michigan, Washington in this debate, FSU versus Texas, or even with Alabama and stuff. Texas, you have their loss to Oklahoma, which, and this brings up my point, that loss to Oklahoma, which only a little bit better from mid-team. Alabama, a Hail Mary away, just as that comment had up, brilliant point, a Hail Mary away from losing to Auburn, who got throttled by New Mexico State. And, as you say, early on in the season, when they were still figuring everything out, a 3-point win against a 6-6 USF team. It's those kinds of margins that would haunt. And so if I'm saying, all right, who is a bit better, who, even though they rebounded farther, who was a little shaky, yeah, I would still lean towards Texas.
Over Alabama.
Over Alabama, yes.
And that's fine. But I'm asking Texas or Florida State. Because like I said, if Georgia would have just beat Alabama, and Alabama is not even in the picture, Florida State is your 4th seed right now. And how do I know this? Because before the conference tournaments, by the way, Travis is already hurt. Travis is already out of the picture. Everyone knows. They've already been dropped from 3 to 4. Washington passes them the week he gets hurt. Last week, in the college football playoffs show, or whatever, their standings, Florida State was 4, Texas was 5. Again, I get Alabama jumping, even though they had the crazy Hail Mary to win, and they had a loss because they beat Georgia. So their 1 week jump makes more sense.
Now
Texas,
hang on.
But hold on. Texas beat a team that was ranked lower than the team that Florida State beat. If they're going from their standings, sure, they scored a lot more points. But again, to me, that shouldn't matter for them to all of a sudden jump.
So
it was sexier.
So for the ranking situation, if I remember correctly, and I may be wrong about this, Texas was 7 and Texas Alabama was 8.
Yes.
With something like this, the one issue I would have with Florida State, even aside from their quarterback, and this kind of hurts them, and I knew that this was going to happen, Louisville losing to Kentucky. Because if Louisville goes and beats Kentucky, they're not ranked 14th. They're still ranked in the top 10. Then it becomes a lot harder to deny ugly, gritty win, neutral site against the top 10 team.
Okay. You ready for the counter? Oklahoma State got throttled by UCF 3 weeks prior. And I'm not saying they just lost to UCF. They lost 45-3. They lost worse to UCF than they did to Texas. Oklahoma State lost to South Alabama this year.
I'm sorry, did anybody else get a sudden urge to start running? Never mind. If you get it, you get it. That's all I'm going to say.
But that's all I'm saying is Florida's, if the quarterback thing was such an issue, Florida State would not be at 4 going into the week. And stop it with Liberty. That is the other argument, though. I'll say that real quick. For those that are going, wow, Florida State, for the committee to say, well, Florida State's undefeated, but because of this and this and this, they should not get into the playoffs. The team that gets into the New Year's Six bowls from the bottom group, there's whoever's the highest ranking. Liberty goes over SMU. You and I've talked about it. Why did Liberty get ahead of SMU? Because Liberty's undefeated. That's the only thing they have. Go look at their schedule. It's the worst in college football. I think Idaho played a harder schedule than Liberty did, but they're undefeated, so they get praised.
Yeah, and I saw that myself. If SMU did not have 2 losses, and that's the thing, if we're talking, say, a 1-loss SMU versus undefeated Liberty, I personally take a 1-loss SMU. But, Liberty, the story, and I get everything. This is, as you said, the sexier pick. You know, undefeated team, they get their flowers, yada, 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 otherwise, whatever. Not to mention, look at who their opponent is in the New Year's Six. Usually, these undefeated group of 5 teams, for what it's worth, they get shafted in that sense anyway. So either way, it's just like, great, you did it here, and then you'll probably get smoked regardless.
Yeah, for SMU, their 2 losses were Oklahoma and TCU. So you can't blame them for their 2 losses.
I'm not blaming them, but I am saying I would have no problem, but you put me in that hotel room in Texas on the committee. I'm like, well, if they had managed to beat one of those teams, okay, we get it. But
so I'm going to say, and I can't believe I'm still thinking about this over the 2, and you bring up the schedule and everything, is look at who Ohio State played and look at who Georgia played compared to Texas. I would take both of those schedules and the difficulty of those 2 schedules over Texas's schedule, just because of the higher ranked seeding guys of when they played them both games. You look at Ohio State, they played number 9 Notre Dame back in week number 5. Then they played number 7 Penn State, came away with a win there. Lost in a close one to Michigan. I would give the nod before Texas to both Georgia and Ohio State before they had made it into this whole top 4.
Yeah, the thing that just bugs me about this whole thing is if the quarterback situation was an issue for Florida State, they should not have been 4 coming into the week. Again, to me, that just says that Texas did so much in the Big 12 championship game that they had to just go that far up to go all the way up to 3. Again, Alabama beats Georgia. That makes sense. If it were only looking at what they did that week, I get it for them to move up that much. But again, the committee the whole time was going, oh, just the best 4 teams, the best 4 teams. So they're saying that Florida State is not better than Alabama or Texas, but they are better than Georgia and Ohio State and Oregon. It makes no sense. None of this ever makes any sense. It was just like you said, it's not sexy anymore that the ACC championship game was a difficult watch because it was a defensive battle and they don't want it. And for them to go, oh, well, they would have no chance. You can't predict any of that. You don't know what's going to happen. Most people did not predict that Green Bay was going to beat Kansas City. A lot of people were not going to predict that some of the outcomes that have happened in college football happened. It is just the way football works. You play it on the field,
and you notice
in college football.
And you notice who are the 2 teams that they pretty much paired up against each other and say, oops, are bad? Florida State and Georgia.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, those that are out there right now going, well, Florida State's going to get killed by Georgia. Who knows? Because there's a lot of things that can happen. And if they do, who knows what would have happened if that was actually a playoff game? Because I'll tell you right now, we see it every year, and that's why bowl games are a complete joke anymore. It's not because there's a playoff system. It's because they get played 4 weeks later, and the kids have finally smartened up and go, I'm not going to play a bowl game and possibly destroy my leg. So I'm going to tell you right now, Florida State might beat Georgia because Georgia might have half of their good players decide, I'm not playing in this game. It doesn't matter. Florida State could get destroyed in this game because they're so devastated that they got jobbed out of making the playoffs that they just are not focused, or they have a fire lit under them and they could upset Georgia. Who knows? And the result of that game does not validate anything because there's so many other variables that happen with these bowl games. That's why picking bowl games is such a headache because you have to look and go, who's even playing in this game? Who's coaching in this game?
I'm going to disagree on one point with the validation. When it comes to this season and everything, it does not matter. But if I'm looking at Florida State, and I've said this 2 or 3 times already, I've got my top brass making noise with the ACC. I know I'm potentially being headhunted. I know I can have a big draw, and I'm playing an SEC team. I'm going out there and I'm saying, hey, this is for us, our school, and proving where we belong. And it's not going to be in the Atlantic Coast Conference. I have said this to you. I've said this to others, especially if Florida State wins. The doomsday clock may just be striking midnight on the ACC.
For the program, I agree. For the players on that field, who knows?
Yeah.
Because by the time they get moved to a different conference, it's not going to matter to them. Again, it's how much do they want to fight for themselves and to prove that they should have been in the playoffs. And it's whether, it lights a fire under them or it kind of devastates them. How many times did we see back in the BCS era, a team just miss out on getting into the national championship game and then get destroyed in the Citrus Bowl because they went, well, what are we playing for? We're not playing for a national championship. We don't care. It happens all the time. And then people go, oh, well, see, they didn't deserve it. No, they just didn't show up. They didn't want to, and they wanted to just get through the game. And maybe their star didn't play in it, and it's just a mess. By the way, everyone that's now going, well, thank God, next year we're going to a 12-team system. It's going to fix everything. No, it's not. Because I can guarantee you, if you are not the Big Ten and you are not the SEC, if you don't win your conference championship, you are not getting in the playoffs. Every single wild card team is going to be from those 2 conferences. If it would have happened this year, other than Florida State, every wild card team would be from the new Big Ten or the SEC.
Randy, I'm going to bring up your 2 favorite words. You know them. You love them.
I know.
You hear them all the time. This is a countdown to the Super League.
Mm-hmm.
change my mind. At this point, you've got to come on board if you're making these arguments.
Yeah, it's what college football has done is completely destroy everything. And it's very disappointing. The money has just ruined college sports. I've actually been writing a paper for college about this stupid junk. It really started just on the NIL deals and what that has kind of changed. But really, you look at the TV contracts and you look at the way teams now are trying to position themselves to be in a conference that gets the billions and billions of dollars from ESPN, and it completely falls apart. The TV deals have killed college sports, and it's very disappointing to say. And you just have to look at this year to prove it. The Pac-12 hemmed and hawed over a TV deal. The TV deal went away, and then so did 10 of their teams.
I mean, you can thank, and I hope you mentioned this in your paper, the College Football Association, led by the likes of Alabama and whatnot, that challenged the NCAA, that led to a Supreme Court decision way back in 1984 that was the first domino to fall in all
Is that
of
the
this.
Bannon case?
I believe so.
I know I have a Supreme Court thing from a while ago, but it might have been that. If not, I'll look into more. But
definitely,
it's a mess and it's disappointing. And again, money ruins everything. And here we are. It's disappointing. I feel bad for all the players on Florida State. In the end, it doesn't affect my life by any means. I will still be watching some of these games, and hopefully they're entertaining. Obviously, now a lot of the world will be rooting for Florida State just to see them try to get redemption. It sucks for Georgia now to be the bad guys, even though they had nothing to do with it. But just a mess, and it's really disappointing. And again, there's an argument for all of these different excuses that I've been hearing all week, and it's just absolutely drove my mind crazy. And some of the tweets that I've seen and some of the coaches that have come out, I love some of them and basically going, you've just taught your kids that if something goes wrong, quit, because it's not going to matter. Like, because a quarterback went down, even though the team then fought hard and won these games, it doesn't matter. Your star players hurt. Fuck off.
Blame the coaches for lobbying. I mean, if you've got guys like Kirby Smart and Nick Saban and Greg Sankey in a gigantic triumvirate cabal-style situation, all saying, hey, committee, SEC champ, hey, committee, SEC champ. If you focus on everything on the field, then maybe in a purer sense, you get more of a vacuum. That's never going to happen.
I even looked at this is how funny, and maybe I'm being petty by looking at this, but I pulled up the committee and I looked and I read what some of these people do. And most of them are all athletic directors of some sort, or have someone. I looked at the pictures and it reminded me of the Good Old Boys group. And that's what it feels like. It's a Good Old Boys group. And if they didn't fit in there, and you only have one woman on this group, it makes a little bit of interesting story. But I just think that this team gets so screwed over. But you're exactly right. Now Georgia has to look like the bad guy, because now they're going to take on this Florida State team that is a decent team. So I agree 100%.
It's so disappointing because I used to love college football, and I would watch more football on Saturdays than Sundays for years, and it just continues to erode. It's the same thing with college basketball. Like, I don't really get into college basketball until like February as far as the NCAA level goes. I watch LC all the time, but NCAA, it's like there's so many teams now, and the way they have it set up, it's nothing matters till February. Like, none of these games in the regular season mean anything other than experience and practice.
Don't even get me started. I presented my whole idea about what I would do with the NCAA tournament. Half the people would love me, half the people would hate me. So in my opinion, it's perfect.
Yeah, and I think that's how all compromise should go. So absolutely frustrating and stuff. I wanted to get Eric on here because he always has some fantastic points on this kind of stuff. And I knew he and I were going to disagree on some of it. And it was not going to be a lot of fun just being on here with Robert agreeing the whole time. So, Eric, I appreciate your time here. But go ahead, Robert.
I want to throw these out here. Now, we've talked about it. So let's preview these two games really quick. And You talked about the spreads earlier. No, I know you talked
I'm
about
just
it
kidding.
about the biggest point spread, but this year, they paired up Alabama, Michigan. They're thinking defense right now. Michigan is a 1.5 point favorite. Yes, I know we're 4 weeks out in it, and the over under is at 45.5.
That's
Do you agree with
significant,
that?
though.
No, do you agree with that?
I don't know.
I'm going to agree slightly, and it's interesting because that game opened Michigan -2.5. So now it's a rolling tide, this time green, coming into Vegas, betting that down. So I'm like, I'm keeping an eye out for that, but I am going to wait until the sharp money comes in because I think with a little bit more of a geographical advantage, and yes, especially to me, and then even in Vegas, this matters. I am giving Michigan the slight edge because if they need to slow the game down more, they are more capable of that than Alabama. As far as the situation with the other matchup, again, geographically, you go ahead, and then I'll make my point.
So here's where they're at right now. And Randy made a great point again in the Pac-12 conference final. Washington was a 9-point dog going into this game against Texas. Texas is a 4-point favorite, but the over. I'm more shocked with the over/under on this one. They're expecting the ball to be thrown about 64.5 on the over/under.
Not
And I might
surprised.
even, I might take the over
first.
on that game.
I honestly, I would too, because Big 12, even though they're going to the SEC, lack of defense. Washington, Pac 12, lack of defense. I'm also noting that one. That opened at 4.5. So you got a little bit of money circulating there. But Narlands ain't too far from the state line. I think Vegas is onto something with that one. Not to mention.
And go ahead. I was just going to say real quick that's why another issue I had with the committee. Why is Texas and Washington at the Sugar Bowl, not the Rose Bowl? That's the game that should be at the Rose Bowl, not Alabama, Michigan.
Completely agreed. But you know where the championship game is going to be held this year? The fine city of Houston, Texas. So you talk about a sexy storyline. I'm just saying, it's set up and it's doable.
By the way, before we get fully away from college football and we start wrapping up this show, because we're already almost an hour in, and that's what I knew, and that's why I didn't even look at our show notes this week, because I knew it was going to be pointless. Can I just really quickly go through the garbage pail that are the bowl games this year?
You want to go over that early?
Well, they're coming up faster than you think.
Hey, now
we're gonna have bowl predictions next week, sir.
Look now. Do not besmirch the good name of the famous Toastery Bowl, okay?
That's the first one I was gonna bring up. A standalone Monday bowl game, and it's at 11:30 a.m. on a Monday. They know no one is going to watch this hot garbage. You better not be. You better be working, sir.
Look,
I start Christmas break on the 15th, so I will be in front of a TV watching it.
Look, I probably will watch the second half, but I mean, if you're going to have garbage, they at least realize, hey, this is normally in the Bahamas. They're having construction on the stadium in the Bahamas. We have to move it somewhere. Hey, University of North Carolina, Charlotte 49ers, here, take this.
I want to say scooters.
Scooters. I will say real quick, congratulations that we finally, for the first time in several years, we do not have a team that's under 500. We have enough teams that are 500 or better. No? Which one am I missing?
Minnesota. They snuck in at 5 and 7.
Yes, 5 and 7.
You're right. So we still have the one. So that makes it even worse. But can Can you count how many teams are 6-6 and made a bowl game?
I don't know.
Just take a guess.
20?
You're really close. There's 21 teams that are 6-6 that made a bowl game this year. We have too many bowl games. That's why bowl games don't matter. That's why these players don't care.
But shout out to James Madison and Jacksonville State, because since there were only 21 6-6 teams, they both got in the back door eligibility as far as their bowl games themselves. So Dukes fans, be happy.
The one bowl game that stuck out to me when I looked at them earlier today, and it happens, and Eric, you mentioned this team a little while ago, and they're facing a 6-6 team. I'm thinking, why an 11-2 SMU taking on a 6-6 Boston College team? What are they thinking by doing that matchup?
They're like, oh, you won your conference. Yay, you pulled an upset. I don't know if they're thinking, hey, here's a free hit, get a win for that, or I don't get it. I actually still have to go back and look up to see where Miami is playing.
They're playing in Boston. Yeah. It's a home game. I mean, it's at Fenway Park, but it's in Boston.
Nothing like bringing in an 11-2 team that's going to crush them and really bring the Boston team down. We're going to see another Boston Tea Party happening.
Look, their fans at Fenway Park have seen a lot of hot garbage this season. What's a couple more hours? Let's be honest. I mean, it's better than going to, and I just remember, the Pinstripe Bowl with Miami and Rutgers. Really? Really? Really?
Getting favorite bowl games and stuff going on. Real quick, since we're finish up college football here, let's talk about the good college football playoff. What's going on over on the FCS? Wild results for most of the Big Sky teams. Montana rolls. Montana State loses in the worst way possible. I don't know if you've seen this one, Eric. Montana State. I
saw a picture of it.
Yeah, Montana State loses their game in overtime after scoring the game-tying touchdown and then having their extra point blocked. And then another blocked kick happens with the Idaho game, but they survive and advance. So Idaho gets to host their first playoff home game in a week since, by the way, I'm not sitting here saying I'm such a great play-by-play guy that I could do these people's jobs already. I'm still getting my experience and stuff. But the people that did the commentary for the Idaho game made my ears bleed. Like, people complain about Troy Aikman and Joe Buck, which I disagree with, other than Troy Aikman was off today. Like, there was so many times he went to go say a point and his brain shut off. I don't know what was going on there. But like, they have an offensive lineman doing color commentary, and he was such a rooting fan the whole time for both teams. I will give him credit there. But for any big play, that was great. I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude, that's not how it works.
To me,
meanwhile, the play-by-play guy, you could tell his only research was reading our buddy Trevin Pixley's headline that got people upset, saying that Idaho was hosting their first playoff game in 30 years, because that man said it 300 times. And I only listened to half the game.
It was incredibly forgettable. I'm thankful that I could zoom in on the action on the field, because I watched most of the second half and going through overtime and everything. And it's like, I barely remember anything the announcer said.
Yeah.
Good or bad. It's like, yes, there were people talking. I was able to ignore them.
So real quick, go through. We won't. Obviously, I've crushed Robert in our high school and college picks. I have locked that up. We're completely done this year. Pulled away even more. 75% in high school. I'm so proud of myself. It's great. But let's just real quick with Eric on here. Let's predict these 4 games. They won't mean anything. I won't even write them down. Maybe Robert will. I'll probably forget anyways. Friday, a good one. Furman at Montana. And I haven't looked at the weather, but Montana played in a blizzard last week. I don't know if they're playing in it again, but who do you got, Eric?
The Paladins have always had a place in my heart. Sorry, Grizz. I'm going with Furman on this one. And looking at the weather this coming week, possibility of another blizzard. But if anybody can cast a good spell in a blizzard, may the luck of the icosahedrons be with ye. Go Paladins.
I gotta stay with Montana, go with the Grizz, and they have just gonna. It's gonna be a tight game. I think it's gonna be close. So I say Grizz.
I'm also going to say Montana. Go to the Saturday games at 9 a.m. Is there any chance Villanova can upset the defending champ, South Dakota State?
No. Sorry, Nova. At least basketball, maybe, kinda. You're getting better at football, but South Dakota State's there for a reason.
Yeah, and they're gonna be there for another few more years. I think South Dakota State rolls in Villanova quite easily.
Yeah, give me the Jackrabbits there. 11:30 a.m. on ABC. North Dakota State and South Dakota. Give me North Dakota State to pull off another upset.
Go with the team that's been there and done it more often, that's got the pedigree. Come on, Bison. You're keeping it going.
Then I'm gonna flip flop. I want to take a game and try to make a difference.
You're not catching up anything. None of these things don't count.
Yeah. Give me South Dakota State. South Dakota.
This was like,
South
whose line is
Dakota.
it anyways? The points don't matter. And whatever the rest of that catch line is. The last game, which is only on ESPN Plus, which is a little disappointing. Albany goes up against your Idaho Vandals. That's a long trip for the Great Danes. Give me Idaho, though. Their defense was not as great as I was hoping it was going to be last week.
First of all, it's where everything's made up and the points don't matter. And I'm going to tell you this. You said your famous thing about the tip beer can. I saw that crowd. I saw the uprights being bolted to the sides and everything. From a team in the capital region in New York, I think that's going to prove to be a little more intimidating than people realize. I'll go with the Vandals.
Yeah, I'm gonna stay with the Vandals also. I think they've just too much energy and too much fire with Coach Jason Eck and what he's doing up there. I think they win. It's gonna be a close one. Albany's defense is a tough defense.
All right, we hit on some NFL stuff before we really got into this debate while we were waiting for Eric's Jacksonville Jaguars to lose the Monday Night Football game. Both of these guys, along with me, are part of an 8-person crew that gives you a power rankings every Tuesday morning on the R&R Sports Report Facebook page. Give you a small, quick preview. Give me your top 5.
Eric, do you have yours, or do you want me to do mine first?
I have mine, but
Okay.
I'm going to put in that famous Squid Crater watch. Randy, I don't know if you feel like having another graphic that you can go ahead and whip up, but I may make that a thing, so keep that in mind. I moved the Niners up to 1, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Eagles 2. I got the Cowboys at 3, getting a win, big win against a team with the winning record. Even though it was the Packers, and even though all the circumstances allowed, I have the Chiefs at 4, and I've got the Ravens in at 5.
Robert?
I do move San Francisco up after their major win this last weekend against Philadelphia. I move them up. Miami, I'm going to put the leader in the AFC in just ahead of my Baltimore Ravens at 3. I'm going to move Philly down to 4 and Dallas at 5. Kansas City no longer in the top 5.
Yeah.
They'll be lucky to be in the top 8.
Kansas City also not in my top 5. I've not completed my rankings as Monday Night Football had not concluded by the time we got done. So just off the top of my head, since obviously Jacksonville won't move themselves up, I will agree with you guys. San Francisco is at 1. I'm actually going to hold on with Baltimore up there. I've had them pretty high. I do like what they have been doing. I will have them at 2, just ahead of the Eagles at 3. I still think they are a very strong team. Cowboys 4. And then I will have the Miami Dolphins just inside the top 5 in that last spot. You can catch out all of those rankings. Chris also a part of those power rankings. He has sent me his as well. Real quick, one more scheduling note. Again, we were hoping to have Tuesday shows the rest of the calendar year. Obviously, we're on here on Monday night again. Apologies, blame elementary school Christmas concerts for this one, and horrible college football committees for making me have to be on the show. Next week, it's another Monday night show right after Monday Night Football. I can't even tell you what the game is. I don't have that schedule up. I've been so focused on this argument. But after whatever the two teams are for Monday Night Football, we will be right here. Yes, sir. Is it a doubleheader?
Doubleheader.
Not even just a doubleheader. Simultaneous with the Manning cast allowing you to watch both games simultaneously. Tennessee at Miami, Packers at the Giants.
Thank God there's a simulcast.
5:15 Pacific, 8:15 Eastern. Kickoff for both games.
By the way, this needs to be a full-time thing. Doubleheader Monday Night Footballs. Let's go. Simulcast Monday Night Football.
Look, there is a certain wannabe discount aisle Dollar Tree budget Mr. Clean Lex Luthor that is going to hate me for this. I do not care. If we ditch Amazon Prime Thursday night and give me Monday night doubleheaders every week, you have a happy man. I will put that to the football gods to make that happen.
Would you be fine with one of those Monday night games being on Amazon? Because they paid billions and billions of dollars for the rights.
I would, because I would be able to dual screen. So if I have to, and if they're two good games, I can dual screen. I'm good with that. I
think, honestly, the players would be fine with it, too. Get rid of the Thursday night game because they absolutely hate it. And then Amazon still gets their money. The two games on Monday night was so nice at the beginning of the year because sometimes we get duds. And then we could switch to another game. And it worked out really well. Obviously, tonight was a different story. It was a really entertaining game with a lot of storylines going on. And we had a lot of fun with it. A couple other things to get going. Again, don't forget now, Monday night after the two games. But we should be back on Tuesdays after that until something else happens. But we will keep you updated. Don't forget, Bad Brackets will be coming in January. I got the new logo in. Now I have sent somebody to create a cool intro for us as well to look as professional as always. These two right here are going to be in the very first episode, along with Harry Broadhurst. Had to have those three as the first three guests for the show. The bracket has been built. The topics for the first 2 months are set. I will say we wanted to do some live shows in there, and maybe we will in the future, but it was just going to be so much easier to be able to bulk record and record when we can for right now. And I didn't want things like this to happen where, hey, we're doing this on this day, and then it completely falls apart, at least for now. So all of that will be pre-recorded, but you can chat along during the premieres and in the comments and stuff, and we'll have a lot of fun with it. I will announce the first episode's topic when we get a bit closer, but the first episode will drop on January 15th. One last thing that I have to bring up because our buddy Sean Garmer broke my heart about an hour or two before the show. For people that have known me for a long time, Jesse knows this for sure. My nickname for a long time was The Riz. It was a play on The Miz even before he was in WWE. When he was in the real world, I made fun of him and said he's no better, and then I called myself The Riz. It's been a nickname of mine for well over 20 years now, and now these young kids have ruined it by making it a phrase and a weird term and this horribleness, and it makes me sad. And then today, the Oxford University Press has named Riz as its word of the year.
Embrace being rancid. It's just as catchy.
Well, that'll be on Bad Brackets for sure. But yeah, it's just sadness that my nickname has been turned into mockery as it has. Just would you? The funny thing is the way I played my backyard wrestling character way back in the day, back when my body didn't hurt, was a character that really thought he had the Riz and really did it. So it worked out great. So, but the name ended up actually working 20 years before it actually became a thing. So maybe they saw me on YouTube and went, "That dude's an idiot, and he thinks he's cool," and then we're just gonna make fun of his name the whole time. But there you go.
Calm down, you hipster. Calm down.
Yeah,
having
total hipster right here. We're gonna leave on this one more prediction because it has been said that it is going to be announced before our next show. Otani goes where?
Oh, why do you put me on the spot like this?
By the way, Haley, putting on the Riz was one of my finishing wrestling moves. So I also said the same thing.
I'm going this way. I said it back then when we made our predictions a few weeks ago, and it proved it a little bit yesterday. The Mariners got rid of Kelnick. Give me the Seattle Mariners still holding on to a thin thread of signing Otani.
As much with the chaos that's going on, and especially trying to get together possibly a Japanese cohort, I'm going to stick my neck out and say, kind of out of nowhere, the Cubs are like, yeah, come to the north side. I know I might be completely off, but it's the hot stove season. Weirder things have happened.
Mm-hmm.
I've been saying Seattle for months. I no longer think that. I also, too, had that thought in my head yesterday when I showed you that trade that the Mariners made, which was a complete salary dump, along with getting rid of Jared Kelnick, that maybe Seattle was trying to open up some room in the pockets to be able to get Otani. But the last thing I've read is they're not even a finalist. But you know what team just became a finalist? That has not been talked about as much as some of the others, but all of a sudden is showing up in rumors. The Atlanta Braves.
No.
It's true.
No. Harry, I love you. No. This, and it's not even any disrespect. It's just, I need to have some peace with some of my fandoms, okay? And it's and it's weird because I shouldn't be mad, but instinctively because I know on the off chance there's a Rays Braves World Series in the next couple of years, I'm going to have my heart broken and I'm going to throw things and I'm going to see him and I will blame him. I know myself here.
Randy, you've seen what
I'm trying to find
you've done, right?
Mm-hmm.
You see what you've done. This is how he was acting in the green room prior to coming on the show, and now you're getting round up on going off the show. I think that was a strategy by you.
Yeah, 13 hours ago, the Braves are among teams still engaged with Shohei Otani. However, the same source just said an hour ago the Braves have not shown interest in free agent Shohei Otani. So who knows? So maybe not. And maybe the money that they just piled on will get it out. It probably is the Dodgers, to be honest. But it was just one of those things where the Braves were never on this list. And then Otani had shown interest at one point, and then it just hasn't gone away like you would have expected. And Seattle seems like they kind of have. So we will see. Also, does Juan Soto ever finally get traded to the Yankees? Can they just stop teasing me here?
No.
It's just Yamamoto and Soto. That's all I care about. Everything else, I don't care. Just give me those two.
At least you have names you can be hyped up about. What do you think I'm dealing with?
No, you that's the problem with the Rays, though. You don't get hyped up about names until April when they show up on your roster and you go, oh, he's good. And or August when you go, we traded for him. Oh, wait, we made him good. That's what the Rays do. They don't go out and get names. They make names.
I'm feeling kind of called out right now. But you're absolutely right. And I don't like it. It's just one of those days for me. It's one of those days for me.
Speaking of, the Rays are expected to listen to trade offers for Isaac Paredes. That hit you at all?
It's one of those to where between that and the whole Rosarena situation, I'm not terribly surprised. It makes me think, all right, who are we actually going to get? What's this going to mean? Can we go ahead and beat the Yankees again? I'll find out in a few months. But I think the answer is going to be yes.
So why we say this, I'm going to bring up the big one, Hall of Fame. Are you excited Jim Leland makes it into Cooperstown?
I haven't seen this announcement.
Oh, Jim Leland is going to be elected into the Hall of Fame this year.
Good.
Well deserved. Well deserved for Leland.
I've been completely sidetracked with other things. Had not even seen that they had. Is he the only one? What is happening?
It was supposed to be him, and Lou Piniella was in the talk. Last I heard, Lou Piniella is not getting in this time.
Is this the Veterans Committee one that voted them in? Because it wasn't the newspaper ones, right?
This one came from. I read this today in the USA Today paper.
So, but it doesn't sound like this is the BDWAA. This does sound like it's the Veterans Committee, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, elected by the Contemporary Baseball Era Committee. So yeah, not the Writers Association, but good for him. He absolutely deserves it.
Mm-hmm.
Lou Piniella does too. Let's get him in there as well. But all right, that's gonna go. We had a lot of fun, a lot of discussion, a lot of funness, and other funness. I obviously can't think of another word. So there you go. We're done. We're out of here. I've lost my mind. Go Florida State in the college football playoffs and a video game. I'll put them in just for the hell of it. But we'll be back Monday night after the 2 Monday night football games. But until then, you guys have a good one. Thanks, Eric, for hopping on the show and hanging out with us for the entire time while still worried about your quarterback down there. Hopefully he is doing
I got to go
fine.
back and listen to the press conference. Hopefully Doug Peterson didn't break my heart.
Yeah, fingers crossed. That is Robert. I'm Randy. This is the R&R Sports Report. And until Monday night, we are